hands. Everyone wants to stand. I roll in my jack. Fast like the wind, everybody's on the board. Room to the streets, I'm the man with the plan. Got the world in my hands, every woman wants to stand. I roll in my jag, fast like the wind. Every mission I take, you know I'm gonna win. Ladies on my left, danger on the right. But it's love and respect that I'm bringing to the fight.
On the deck with the 9 lives, playing the game. A heart full of fire, can't be tamed. In the shadows I roam.
Welcome to the adventures of J Cat, where thrills meet tenderness in a captivating blend of sexy, excitement and romance. Hosted by the adventurous Jay Bahari, this hip podcast invites listeners to embark on exhilarating journeys filled with captivating stories and heartfelt moments. Each episode explores the intriguing intersections of adventure and love, transporting you to breathtaking romance and inspiring tales that will leave you yearning for your own escapades. Whether you're a seasoned traveler, a hopeless romantic, or simply someone who appreciates a great story, J Cat Adventures promises a delightful escape into the extraordinary, sparking your imagination and igniting your wanderlust. Tune in and let the adventures begin.
Got my eyes on the prize, but my heart's in the beat.
Hi, I am your host Jay Bahari. Let's go. J Cat, a winter holiday full of romance. The winter holiday air was crisp as J Cat stepped off the private plane, his breath misting in front of him as he adjusted his scarf against the chill. He glanced around, taking in the sweeping view of the snow-capped mountains surrounding the exclusive ski resort nestled in the Alps. He wasn't there for an assignment this time, he was there for something far more personal, a long overdue escape with Elara, the woman who had effortlessly thawed the parts of him he'd kept buried for too long. Elara was waiting for him by the cabin, her cheeks rosy from the cold, her dark hair peeking out from beneath a thick woolen hat. Her eyes sparkled as she watched him approach, and he couldn't help but smile, his pace quickening as he crossed the distance between them. Finally, she breathed, wrapping her arms around his neck as he pulled her close. I was beginning to think you'd find a way to get sidetracked. He grinned, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. Nothing in the world could have kept me away from this, he murmured, his voice low, meant only for her. The cabin was a masterpiece of rustic charm and understated luxury, with a roaring fire, high ceilings, and large windows that framed the sweeping mountain views. Snow blanketed everything outside, creating a quiet, enchanted world where the only sound was the soft crackling of the fire. Over the next few days, they settled into a rhythm that felt as easy as it was exhilarating. Their mornings began with coffee in bed, savoring the warmth beneath the thick quilts while the world outside remained cold and silent. They spent the day skiing down pristine slopes, their laughter filling the air as they raced each other to the bottom, the mountain air biting their faces in the most invigorating way. And at night, they would retreat back to the cozy cabin, letting the quiet and warmth enfold them. One particular evening, after a long day on the slopes, J Cat had something special planned. He guided Elara outside to a secluded clearing in the snow where he'd arranged a private table beneath a canopy of fairy lights strung between the pine trees. Lanterns flickered, casting a soft, romantic glow across the snow, and a fire crackled nearby, providing warmth in the chilly night. Elara's eyes widened in awe as she took it all in. You really outdid yourself, she whispered, her voice laced with amazement as she looked around. He pulled her close, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. Only the best for you, he replied softly, his fingers grazing her cheek as he looked down into her eyes. They sat down to dinner, the snow gently falling around them as they shared stories and memories. The conversation was easy, flowing naturally from one topic to the next. Every once in a while, they'd stop just to look at each other, marveling at the rare sense of peace they'd found together. It was as if the whole world had faded away, leaving only the two of them in this magical, snow-covered paradise. As they finished their meal, J Cat took her hand, leading her over to a small ice rink he'd arranged just a few steps from their table. He laced up her skates, his fingers lingering on hers as he helped her to her feet. She laughed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I didn't know you could ice skate, J Cat. He chuckled, shrugging. There's a lot you don't know about me, he teased, taking her hand and leading her onto the ice. They skated in slow circles, their hands entwined, their laughter echoing in the stillness of the night. At one point, she stumbled, but he caught her, his arms steady around her waist as he pulled her close. Their laughter faded, replaced by a tender silence as they stood there, face to face in the middle of the rink, snow falling softly around them. Without a word, he leaned in, capturing her lips in a kiss that was gentle at first, but deepened with every heartbeat. The cold seemed to disappear, replaced by the warmth of their connection, the kind that burned brighter than any fire. When they finally broke apart, her eyes were shining with unshed tears, a soft smile playing at her lips. "I've never had a holiday like this," she whispered, her voice catching on the words. He brushed a thumb over her cheek, his gaze never leaving hers. "Neither have I," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel. "But I know this much, I don't want it to end." They returned to the cabin, the night deepening around them, and as they settled by the fire, wrapped in each other's arms, they talked about dreams, fears, and all the things they'd never shared with anyone else. In the quiet, intimate space of the cabin, they felt truly at home, like they belonged not only in this moment but with each other. As dawn broke over the mountains the next morning, casting a golden glow over the world, they stood by the window, watching the sun rise over the snow-covered peaks. She leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder as his arm wrapped around her waist. "Thank you for this," she whispered, her voice soft. "For all of it." He kissed the top of her head, his heart full in a way he hadn't thought possible. "Anything for you," he replied, meaning every word. And as they stood there, watching the new day unfold, they knew this holiday was just the beginning of something far greater, a love that, like the winter snow, was pure, untouched, and bound to endure. The morning sun spilled through the cabin's windows, casting a warm glow across the room. J-Cat watched Elara as she slowly stirred awake, her face softened by sleep. He couldn't help but marvel at the peace she brought him, this gentle yet fierce presence who had carved her way into his life with ease. It was new to him, this feeling. A holiday with her had left an impression far deeper than he'd imagined. She opened her eyes, catching him watching her, and gave a soft smile. "Morning," she murmured, her voice thick with sleep. He brushed a hand through her hair, tucking a stray lock behind her ear. "Morning, beautiful," he whispered, leaning in to press a kiss to her forehead. "How about breakfast? I thought maybe I could surprise you." She raised an eyebrow, a playful smile curving her lips. "Oh, you're full of surprises lately, aren't you?" J-Cat chuckled, easing out of bed and heading to the kitchen area. He quickly got to work, arranging fresh berries, croissants, and scrambled eggs onto plates, adding coffee brewed just the way she liked. As he set the breakfast tray before her, she took it all in, eyes gleaming with delight. "This is perfect," she said, giving his hand a squeeze as he sat down next to her, their fingers entwined. They ate in comfortable silence, occasionally sharing bites and brushing against each other, their laughter filling the cabin. After breakfast, they decided to explore a hidden winter trail J-Cat had found the day before. Bundled up in thick coats and scarves, they wandered along the winding path, trees heavy with snow creating an archway above them. The world was quiet, serene, the fresh snow crunching beneath their boots. As they walked, he told her stories from his past assignments, tales that made her laugh and gasp, while she shared stories of her childhood and dreams for the future. They found themselves holding hands, not for warmth, but because it felt like the most natural thing in the world. At a secluded spot overlooking a frozen lake, he paused, pulling her into his arms. She looked up at him, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her breath forming soft clouds between them. In that moment, he couldn't resist. He leaned in, kissing her deeply, feeling the world melt away until there was nothing left but the two of them. The days slipped by in a haze of snowy adventures and fireside nights, their connection growing stronger with every passing moment. There was a depth in her eyes when she looked at him, an understanding that needed no words. She had found a way to break through his walls without ever trying, and he was grateful for it. On the last evening of their stay, he led her to a small ice cave he'd discovered. Lit by dozens of candles flickering in the icy blue light, the place was enchanting. She gasped, turning to him with eyes wide, awestruck. "J-Cat, this is magical," she whispered. He took her hand, leading her to a small table he'd set up with glasses of champagne. As they toasted, he looked at her, his gaze intense. "I've spent a lot of my life looking for things I didn't realize I needed. But finding you, it's like finding a part of myself I didn't even know was missing." She looked back at him, her own eyes brimming with emotion. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" she murmured, lifting her glass to his. They clinked glasses, sipping slowly, savoring the taste, the moment, and everything it meant. As they set their glasses aside, he took her in his arms, drawing her close as they swayed to an invisible rhythm, the only sound the crackle of ice around them. They danced there in the ice cave, the world outside forgotten. There was no mission, no danger, no past or future, just the two of them, wrapped in each other's arms, feeling like they'd finally found home. As they swayed, he knew this winter holiday had become something far more than he'd ever expected. It was a beginning, a promise of something more. Back at the cabin, they sat together by the fire, wrapped in blankets and each other. The night deepened around them, and J-Cat felt something he hadn't felt in years, peace. In the quiet, he whispered, "Elara, let's make this our tradition, this winter holiday, just us, year after year. What do you say?" She looked up at him, her smile radiant, her eyes glistening. "I'd love nothing more." And with that, they sealed their promise with a kiss, a silent vow that this love, this joy, was just the beginning of all the holidays they would spend together, each one as timeless and beautiful as this first. As they sat by the fire, the warmth casting a golden glow over their faces, Elara's eyes sparkled with a mischievous glint. She nudged J-Cat playfully, a smirk creeping across her lips. "So, Mr. International Man of Mystery," she teased, her voice light, "what's the most trouble you've ever gotten yourself into?" He grinned, raising an eyebrow. "You mean other than you?" he replied, wrapping an arm around her waist and pulling her close. She laughed, playfully swatting his shoulder. "Oh, I can't be that bad, can I?" she challenged, leaning in with a raised eyebrow of her own. "Actually," he said, his voice dropping to a low, teasing tone, "you're a whole new kind of trouble. The good kind." He leaned in closer, whispering in her ear, "And I don't mind it one bit." She blushed, but didn't back down. Instead, she stood up and grabbed a fluffy pillow from the couch, looking at him with mock seriousness. "Good kind of trouble, huh?" She gave him a small, daring smile before suddenly tossing the pillow at him. Caught off guard, J-Cat's look of shock quickly turned to laughter. "Oh, so it's a fight you want." He jumped up, grabbing another pillow in response, his eyes lit with that competitive spark. They chased each other around the cabin, the sound of their laughter filling the cozy space. Pillows flew, blankets tangled, and they wrestled playfully, neither willing to back down. J-Cat finally managed to catch her, scooping her up in his arms as she squealed with laughter. "Caught you," he announced victoriously, holding her close. She looked up at him, catching her breath, cheeks flushed from their playful scuffle. With a smile, she wrapped her arms around his neck. "I surrender," she whispered, resting her forehead against his. "Smart move," he teased, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "But just so you know, I'll never surrender to you." He smiled, lowering his face to hers until their noses brushed, their breaths mingling in the warm, cozy air of the cabin. She tilted her head up to meet his lips, and as they kissed, the playfulness melted into something deeper, more tender. Their laughter faded into gentle smiles as they held each other, the night's playful warmth giving way to a quiet sense of connection. As they finally settled back by the fire, wrapped up in each other, J-Cat pulled her close and whispered, "Now, that's my kind of winter holiday." Elara smiled, tracing lazy circles on J-Cat's chest as they lay curled up in the warmth of the firelight. The snow fell softly outside, but inside, the world was still. She nestled deeper against him, a sigh of contentment escaping her lips. "What are you thinking?" he asked, brushing his fingers along her arm, his touch gentle and familiar. She looked up, her eyes sparkling with a blend of mischief and affection. "That I could stay like this forever. And maybe about the trouble we'll find ourselves in tomorrow." He chuckled, pulling her closer. "Trouble always finds us, doesn't it?" he murmured, but there was a hint of admiration in his tone. "But with you, it's the best kind of trouble." Elara lifted her head, her eyes catching his with a spark of daring. "You know, there's a frozen lake just down the path," she whispered. "The locals say it's where couples go for a midnight kiss." J-Cat raised an eyebrow, a grin tugging at his lips. "So, you're suggesting a late-night expedition?" he teased, his voice low and warm. "Maybe I am," she replied, giving his chest a soft poke. "If you think you can keep up." In moments, they were wrapped in scarves and coats, their breath visible in the moonlit chill as they trudged toward the lake. Snow crunched underfoot, and laughter escaped them as they reached the lake's edge, the stillness of the ice broken only by their soft voices. J-Cat took her hand, his fingers entwining with hers as they stepped onto the ice together, moving in time with an invisible rhythm. The winter air, cold and sharp, heightened each touch, each shared look. After a moment, she paused, her gaze serious. "You know, you're not as tough as you look," she whispered playfully. "There's a softness in you I didn't expect." J-Cat smiled, pulling her closer, his voice soft. Maybe that's because you're my weakness, he admitted, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face before cupping her cheeks in his hands. Their breaths mingled, and he leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that spoke of promises whispered and dreams shared. When they finally broke apart, they both laughed, exhilarated, their cheeks flushed from more than just the cold. Wrapping her in his arms, J-Cat guided them back to the warmth of the cabin, the stillness of the night around them filled with the sound of their laughter and the thrill of new memories being made. J-Cat and Elara strolled down the bustling streets lined with twinkling lights and cheerful holiday decorations. Snow was beginning to drift down in soft flakes, layering the city in a powdery white coat as they walked side by side, fingers laced. They'd planned a day of holiday shopping, but as soon as they set foot in the heart of the city's winter wonderland, the day unfolded into something far more magical. The holiday spirit was contagious, and every store they entered seemed to hold a charm of its own. Elara, with her easygoing grace and playful smile, moved between the displays, trying on scarves, examining glass ornaments, and lingering over books. J-Cat watched her every move, charmed by the way her eyes lit up as they discovered each unique find. They laughed as he playfully insisted on picking out the most outlandish gifts he could find, a singing snowman here, a colorful Christmas sweater there. In a cozy bookstore, Elara gravitated toward the classics section. She brushed her fingers over the spines, finally picking up a beautifully bound copy of Pride and Prejudice. With a sly smile, she held it up to him. Thoughts on a little romance this holiday? J-Cat grinned, looking at her with a mischievous twinkle in his eye. Only if I get to be Mr. Darcy, he replied, playfully bowing. She laughed, her laughter mingling with the soft holiday music playing in the background. As the day wore on, the city's holiday lights began to glow brighter against the evening sky. Their shopping bags were now filled with gifts they'd picked out for loved ones, books, handcrafted ornaments, and a few silly items they couldn't resist. With their holiday loot in tow, J-Cat suggested they take a break for dinner. They ducked into a quaint little restaurant nestled in a side street, its entrance adorned with fairy lights and a wreath on the door. Inside, they were greeted with the warm glow of candles on each table, casting a cozy, intimate ambience across the room. The two were seated near a fireplace, where they could still catch glimpses of the snowy scene outside the window. They ordered a bottle of red wine, and as they waited, J-Cat leaned in close, reaching across the table to gently take her hand. Today's been perfect, he murmured, his voice low and warm. Seeing the holidays through your eyes. I think it's my new favorite way to spend this season. Elara blushed, squeezing his hand in return. I feel the same way. And I'm already looking forward to wrapping all these gifts. You know, maybe a little Christmas movie marathon afterward? As their dinner arrived, J-Cat savored every moment. The warmth of the food, the softness of the lights, and Elara's laughter made everything around them feel like a dream. Between bites of their meal, they shared stories of past holidays, J-Cat's tales of far-off places where he'd spent his Christmases on missions, and Elara's simpler family traditions of baking cookies and singing carols by the fire. They lingered over dessert, a decadent chocolate torte they shared with 2 forks, each bite sweeter than the last. Their conversation grew quieter, the space between them seeming to dissolve with every passing moment. Finally, with the last of the wine and a few remaining flickering candles, J-Cat leaned closer, whispering, I think the best gift I've gotten this year is this night with you. Elara's smile was soft as she looked back at him, her eyes reflecting the warmth and glow around them. And here I thought you were just here for the Christmas shopping. They both laughed softly, a laugh that felt like a promise, a memory they would hold dear for seasons to come. The night seemed to wrap around them as they stood to leave, stepping back into the snowy evening hand in hand, ready to make their way home together, carrying the memory of this perfect holiday day close to their hearts. As they walked back, the snow began falling heavier, blanketing the streets in a fresh, undisturbed layer. It muffled the sounds of the city, making the world feel smaller and more intimate. J-Cat pulled Elara closer, wrapping his arm around her shoulders as they made their way through the quiet, sparkling city. Maybe we took a little longer than expected in that last shop, he murmured playfully, brushing some snow from her hair. But I'm glad we did. Time well spent, Elara replied, smiling up at him. Though I think you enjoyed picking out those ridiculous socks more than you let on, she teased, poking him in the ribs, her laugh lighting up the night. They stopped at a small park, the trees wrapped in lights and the benches capped with snow. The world felt like a scene from a postcard, perfect and serene. J-Cat couldn't help himself, he pulled Elara into his arms, their breath mingling in the cold air as he looked into her eyes. Without another word, he leaned in and kissed her, softly at first, then deeper, savoring the quiet and the closeness. The snowflakes fell around them, landing in her hair, and he felt his heart beat just a little faster. It was as though the whole city had vanished, leaving only the two of them in their snowy wonderland. When they finally pulled apart, Elara was blushing, her cheeks rosy from the cold and something more. J-Cat grinned, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "You make this city feel like home," he whispered, his voice filled with something warm and genuine. Elara looked up at him, her eyes bright. "Well, I think you're the best part of it." They shared a quiet moment together, then continued their walk, laughing and talking, until they reached her apartment. As they stepped into the warmth, Elara slipped off her coat and grinned, eyes twinkling. "Care to help me wrap those gifts we picked up?" J-Cat raised an eyebrow, smirking. "I'll help on one condition, only if I get to unwrap a present tonight as well." She blushed, swatting his arm playfully. "You might have to be on your best behavior, then." They settled down, holiday music playing softly in the background as they wrapped gifts together. J-Cat made a mess of the ribbons and wrapping paper, eliciting laughter from Elara at his lack of finesse. But every once in a while, he'd lean over, stealing a quick kiss, catching her off guard with the warmth of his touch and the glimmer in his eyes. Once the gifts were all wrapped in under the small tree, J-Cat pulled her onto the couch, wrapping her in his arms as they watched the lights twinkle. The night felt complete, warm, and alive with possibility. The holiday spirit surrounded them, and in the quiet glow, they both knew this was only the beginning of a story they'd tell for years to come. Finally, as the clock struck midnight, J-Cat whispered, "Merry Christmas, Elara," his voice a soft promise in the quiet. "Merry Christmas, J-Cat," she replied, her voice full of hope. And together, they watched the snow fall outside, knowing they had everything they needed right there in that moment, wrapped up in each other. The last day of their winter holiday approached. J-Cat and Elara decided to make the most of every remaining moment. They woke early, the pale winter light casting a soft glow over the snowy landscape outside their cozy cabin. Snowflakes drifted lazily to the ground, thickening the white blanket that covered everything around them. Elara wrapped herself in a woolen shawl as they sipped their morning coffee by the large stone fireplace. J-Cat smiled, watching her as she gazed out the window, mesmerized by the view. The fire crackled softly, and the scent of pine and spice filled the air. "Why don't we make today one to remember?" J-Cat suggested, setting his mug down. "Let's go on one last adventure. Then tonight, a feast fit for a holiday finale." She agreed, eyes lighting up with excitement, and soon they were bundled up and making their way down a nearby path. They laughed, slipping and sliding as they trudged through the snow, the cold air turning their breath to mist. Hand in hand, they ventured into a nearby forest, following the trail until they reached a secluded clearing. Icicles hung from the branches, glistening like crystals, and the world was silent, a winter wonderland all to themselves. J-Cat pulled her close, his gloved hands cradling her face as he pressed a warm kiss to her lips, the chill of the air contrasting with the heat between them. They stood there, wrapped up in each other, feeling as if time had stopped just for them. "Thank you for making this holiday perfect," Elara whispered, her eyes soft and full of emotion. J-Cat chuckled, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "I think you had a lot to do with that." They lingered in the clearing, sharing quiet moments and laughter, before heading back to the cabin, their fingers intertwined. As evening fell, J-Cat got to work on their dinner, preparing a grand holiday meal while Elara set the table, arranging candles and evergreens. The cabin glowed with warmth, the flames in the fireplace casting flickering shadows on the walls, and the scent of roasted vegetables and savory meats filled the air. Elara found herself smiling, lost in the cozy holiday magic that seemed to hang over everything. Once the feast was ready, they sat down together, clinking glasses of sparkling cider in a toast to the season, to adventure, and to each other. They laughed, talked, and shared stories, their voices filling the quiet space, each word drawing them closer together. When dinner was over, J-Cat surprised her with one last gift, something small he'd picked up at a local shop on their first day. It was a silver necklace with a delicate snowflake pendant. He fastened it around her neck, his fingers brushing her skin, leaving a warmth that lingered long after he'd stepped back. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice barely a whisper as she gazed up at him. J-Cat smiled. "It reminded me of this holiday, one of a kind, beautiful, and unforgettable." They moved to the couch by the fire, wrapping themselves in a cozy blanket as they gazed at the flames. Elara rested her head on J-Cat's shoulder, sighing contentedly as he traced small circles on her hand. This feels like a dream, she murmured, her eyes closing as she sank deeper into the warmth and comfort of the moment. J-Cat pressed a kiss to her forehead. Then let's make it last. Let's promise to do this again, every year. A holiday getaway, just us, somewhere new, somewhere magical. She smiled, her heart swelling with happiness. I'd like that. They stayed by the fire long into the night, talking about everything and nothing, the kind of conversations that only come with true closeness. When the fire finally dwindled, they headed to bed, snuggling together under thick blankets, the sounds of the quiet winter night lulling them to sleep. In the morning, as the sun rose, they packed their bags reluctantly, taking one last look at the cabin and the snow-covered world around it. With a shared smile, they promised each other that this wouldn't be the end of their holiday traditions, it was only the beginning. As they drove away, J-Cat reached over, lacing his fingers with hers. They watched the snowy landscape fade behind them, each of them filled with memories that would stay with them forever. And as they left, they knew that no matter where they went or how busy life might get, they'd always make time for their winter holiday, their shared adventures, and the love that had only grown stronger in the magic of the season.
He's gonna win. Ladies on his left, danger on the right. What is love and respect that he's bringing to the fight?
And that's a wrap on another thrilling episode of J-Cat Adventures. I hope you've been on the edge of your seat, caught up in the mystery, excitement, and danger that always follows J-Cat wherever he goes. From heart-pounding action to deep emotional connections, J-Cat's world never fails to surprise. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, or click the follow button, so you never miss out on the next big adventure. Whether you're into romance, suspense, or mind-bending mysteries, there's always something more coming. And don't be shy, reach out. You can audio call or audio text chat with me directly. I'd love to know what you want to see next in J-Cat's world or hear your thoughts on today's episode. Want to dive deeper? Explore more of J-Cat's thrilling escapades by grabbing an ebook at www.jcatadventures.com or head over to Amazon for paperbacks and hard copies. Trust me, you'll want to have J-Cat's latest adventure right in your hands. And remember, the podcast continues across your favorite platforms: iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and Amazon Music. Wherever you go, J-Cat is right there, ready to bring you into his world of suspense, romance, and non-stop action. But it doesn't end here, this journey is just the beginning. Stay tuned for the next episode, where J-Cat takes on new challenges, faces dangerous foes, and maybe even finds love in unexpected places. Until next time, keep that spirit of adventure burning bright. The world is filled with endless possibilities, and J-Cat is proof that no mystery is too big to solve. Remember, adventure is thrilling, but the heart's deepest desires are the greatest mysteries of all. Keep chasing passion, stay fearless, and never let love slip through your fingers. This is Jay Bahari, signing off. Stay curious, stay bold, and always keep exploring, because the next chapter of J-Cat Adventures is just around the corner.
Ladies on his left, danger on the right. What is love and respect that he's bringing to the fight? He's the cat with the 9 lives, playing the game. A heart full of fire can't be tamed. In the shadows he roams, but he shines so bright. With every step he takes, he's doing it right. He's J-Cat, the name that rings in every city. Slick with the moves, ain't nothing here pretty. From the boardroom to the streets, he's the man with the plan. Got the world in my hands, every woman wants to stand. He rolling, he's Jack, fast like the wind. Every mission he takes. Larry is so, so kind. In the realm of love, the connections bind. Day out by your side, a symphony unfurls, spreading love across the digital world. Bahari's love breaking out of range. Solar mission breaking down the wall. 60 years deep, but his spirit is young. Every heart is strong. From the binary gates to the pixelated sky, soaring high, he's on a quest to spread love. So here